Christopher Luxon is among world leaders attending the NATO summit in the Netherlands, but the Prime Minister won't get to meet Donald Trump. The US President has already sparked controversy by not committing to NATO's Article 5 guarantee that an attack on one member of the alliance is considered an attack on all. Political correspondent Zane Small has the developments.
Donald Trump touched down for the NATO summit gung-ho on the back of a ceasefire he announced between Israel and Iran. The US leader given a royal welcome to the Netherlands, a dinner hosted by the Dutch King and Queen.
To our alliance.
But that NATO alliance, a military agreement between the US, Canada and Europe, now looks to be up for reinterpretation after comments Trump made on Air Force One, in which he wouldn't commit to NATO's Article 5 guarantee that an attack on one member is considered an attack on all.
There's numerous definitions of Article 5, you know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. I've become friends with many of those leaders.
Trump's presence at the NATO summit seemed like an opportunity for Christopher Luxon to have his first meeting with America's leader. It was reported in Asian media that Trump wanted to meet with the leaders of the Indo-Pacific four NATO partners: New Zealand, Australia, Japan and South Korea. But Christopher Luxon is the only IP4 Prime Minister attending this NATO summit, and he won't get to meet Trump, the way former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern did in 2019.
It genuinely is a scheduling issue. I think he's here for 24 hours or something and then straight back again.
Trump clearly in demand at NATO. The US leader posted a screenshot of a message he received from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, in which he heaped praise on the president for getting NATO members to agree to raise defence spending to 5% of GDP. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done, he says. Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win.
Of course we have to do it because of keeping ourselves safe here. But do you really think, if Donald Trump would not have been president, that tomorrow he would get to the 5%? Are you really thinking that?
Christopher Luxon also got a shout-out from the NATO leader, who described New Zealand as a highly valued partner providing important support to Ukraine.
We built a good friendship since then.
But the Prime Minister is not committing New Zealand to the same defence spending target as NATO members.
From a New Zealand point of view, the fact that we have doubled our expenditure, we've got a very clear, comprehensive plan. A lot of our partners are incredibly impressed by that.
The government's budget included $9 billion of new defence spending under a plan to lift it to more than 2% of GDP in the next 8 years.
Do you think New Zealand risks falling behind with these big expenses?
Well, as you know, a lot of countries in NATO are around the 1% mark. We are around the 1% mark, moving to 2%, but on quite a trajectory to go upwards. And we are also checking in every 2 years or even earlier if circumstances require.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's presence at the summit, a reminder of Russia's invasion and why NATO is arming up. But the latest flare-up between Israel and Iran, a wake-up call to world leaders that no nation is immune from conflict.
Well, Christopher Luxon is due to meet Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney in the next hour. The Post's Thomas Manch is in The Hague. I spoke to him a short time ago and asked what we can read into the fact that Luxon won't be getting a formal meeting with the US President this trip.
I think any meeting with Trump is determined on the whims of what he wants and his schedule. Coming into this meeting, there was suggestion, and it was on the NATO program, that Trump would meet with the IP4 leaders. That's a group of countries that includes New Zealand and therefore includes Luxon. Many other IP4 leaders all the other IP4 leaders decided not to attend the conference, and the meeting with Trump appears to have fallen through. This does not rule out Luxon coming across Trump at the summit at some point today, but there is no formal meeting scheduled.
OK, how has the presence of President Trump changed things there? We know he's due to speak shortly. What are we expecting from him?
Well, Trump's war in Iran has really consumed dialogue leading up into the summit today. But beyond that, his interests have been pushing for European countries to share the burden of defence defence spending for the NATO alliance. With Secretary General Mark Rutte, he has sort of they're claiming a win in attaining agreement from all the countries here at NATO to reach 5% of GDP on defence spending. So I think he's going to come away wanting to claim it a successful summit, but it has been kept very short and very contained due to the risk that Trump poses to any sort of multilateral grouping.
Okay. Would you say that given global events that has had an impact on the overall tone of this NATO summit?
Certainly, I think they've had to work very hard to maintain unity, particularly with another conflict breaking out, albeit outside the traditional scope of NATO, their traditional region. But they've worked very hard, I think, to have a unified message. Luxon's saying the same. He's saying he sees a unified message when he meets all of these leaders. And he's also echoing what they're saying about the conflict in Iran, about the need for NATO. So, despite all the sort of chaos Trump brings to the equation, a lot of work behind the scenes to keep everything together.
How has Prime Minister Luxon been received by those that he's met so far?
Luxon's been received very warmly, particularly by the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who he has a sort of personal connection with. They both worked at Unilever in the past, and also by mostly leaders of the Netherlands and also the Nordic countries that he's been meeting here. So, fairly low stakes meetings for Luxon, but, I think they're very encouraged to see he's here, when some of the other IP4 leaders didn't show.
And just finally, what is coming up for the New Zealand Prime Minister today?
Another big day of meetings, another, series of bilaterals, but then also at the end of the day, this IP4 meeting. So what that means is he gets in the room with Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and they talk about that relationship between this Northern Hemisphere military alliance and the Indo-Pacific countries, of which New Zealand is a part.
A big day ahead. The Post's Thomas Manch there. Thanks so much for your time.